Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph and Mitzvah Hashem. Today, we will be learning Daf Tes Amid Aleph. We are continuing to learn the halachos of netillas yadayim, which I find to be a very fascinating body of halacha. So, we pick up on Tes Amid Aleph, Sif Beis, top line in the Shulchan Aruch. Says the Mechaber, when washing netillas yadayim, yadakdek, we should take care to pour water on our hands 3 times. Why is this? To remove the ruach ra that rests on our hands. Says the Mishnah Berurah, we should take care to do this. Why? Because besides the 2 reasons that we saw at the beginning of Hilchos Netillas Yadayim for the need to wash the netillas yadayim every morning, where we said there are 2 reasons why you need to wash your hands every morning as preparation for Kriya Shema and for Tefillah. Let's remember, we had the Machlokes, the Rosh, and the Rashba. The Rosh told us that yadayim askani yosein, our hands by nature are very busy, and therefore while we're in bed sleeping at night, our hands touched various places on our bodies, including a makom mechusa. So we have yadayim mutunafais, our hands are unclean, and therefore in order to prepare for kabbalah salmachus shemayim of Kriya Shema and for tefillah, we need to wash our hands. That was the Rosh. The Rashba gave another reason. The Rashba said that in the morning we're nasa kibriya chadasha, we're a new creation. And let's remember, why were we created? Well, that was the very first Mishnah Berurah in Siman Aleph. The Mishnah Berurah told us, you are created la'avodas bayrei ki lekach nivra ha'adam. We were created for avodas habayrei. So in the morning we're a briya chadasha, we're a fresh creation, created to go serve the Rabbeinu Shalom, just like a kohen. Before he goes to do the avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, he has to go to the kiyar and he has to wash his hands. So too, we're a briya chadasha in the morning. We have to go and we have to wash our hands first before we embark on a day of avodas Hashem. And we learned previously that the ikar avodah that we do is the tefillah, u'neshalma parmis vasenu, the davening. So again, preparatory to tefillah, we have to go wash our hands. So both the Rosh and the Rashba, in essence, and we see that in the Mishnah Berurah over here, when the Mishnah Berurah says, Shetzarech lito yodav la tefillah, both the Rosh and the Rambam do have a focus that the netillas yadayim is preparatory to tefillah. Just the Rosh says, it's because of a technical problem, which is yadayim metunafais, our hands are unclean because yadayim askadi yosein. And the Rashba says it's a different type of problem. It's a more, so to speak, ruchniistic type of issue, which is that we have to wash our hands like the kohen washes from the kiyar. Now the Mechaber is telling us, when you go wash, you should pour water on each hand 3 times. Why? So explains the Mishnah Berurah, because aside from the 2 reasons of the Rosh and the Rashba, which are both focused on preparation for davening, we also have to wash gam mishum ruach ra shara al yadayim. We also have to wash our hands to remove the ruach ra that rests on our hands. However, if we were washing our hands only because of the ruach ra, there would be no bracha of asher kiddishanu b'mitzvahs of tzivanu al netillas yadayim. Why? Because if we're washing to remove a ruach ra, that's not mitam mitzvah. That's not a mitzvah to wash. If we're washing in preparation for tefillah, so that's a mitzvah. We're washing to prepare ourselves to go be makabel olmachus shamayim with Kriya Shema and then to go daven to the Rabbeinu Shalom. If we're washing to prepare ourselves for another day of avodas Hashem, like the Rashba, again, that's a washing of a mitzvah. Asher kedishanu b'mitzvahs of tzivanu. But if we're washing because we have a ruach ra on our hands, and we have this ruach ra that we're going to see could cause us a certain level of sakana, so we have to remove a ruach ra. That's like washing hands that are dirty. We're not washing in preparation for davening. We're washing to remove sakana. It's like washing to remove dirt. So that's not a mitzvah, so you wouldn't make a bracha. That's why, explains the Chavetz Chaim, at the outset of Siman Dalid, when we spoke about washing netillas yadayim and making a bracha on netillas yadayim, we quoted the Rosh and the Rashba. Now that we've already established that you have to wash the netillas yadayim and you make a bracha on the netillas yadayim, now the Mechaber is bringing down another reason, and that is the ruach ra that's shoira al hayadayim. Lachein anu tzrichim gam l'ta'amim anal. That's why it's not enough to only have the reason of ruach ra. And it's like I mentioned earlier, I think most people, if you stop them in the street and you ask them, why do you wash the netillas yadayim in the morning? They're going to say right away, ruach ra. How about the Rosh and the Rashba, right? But most people are aware of the reason of ruach ra, but then that begs the question, why are you making a bracha? So the reason you're making a bracha is because of the Rosh and the Rashba. Now let's go to Sif Tes. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Arois Aleihen. We have to pour water on the hands. V'yitleim lechatchila ad perak hazraya. Lechatchila, we have to wash the hands until the wrist. A lot of people, they just take the cup, pour. They don't pay attention to where the water's going. You have to wash lechatchila all the way ad perak hazraya, all the way until the wrist. If you don't have sufficient water, dayat kishrei etzba'osav, it is technically b'di'eved, it is enough to wash at kishrei etzba'osav until the knuckles, where the fingers meet the rest of the hand, till the base of the fingers. V'tzarich, and this is very interesting, what the Mishnah Berurah is going to say now, it's not only the technical details of what the Mishnah Berurah says, but I think it sheds light on how we have to look at something like the netillas yadayim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, and he brings this down, Ois Katan Yud Gimel L'Sharet Tzion, this is brought down from the Magen Avraham. V'tzarich lifshait hakapos. You have to stretch out the palms of your hands after you wash the netillas yadayim. When you go to make the bracha of al netillas yadayim, you should open up and stretch out your hands, like somebody who's stretching out his hands to accept, to receive something in his hands. V'yagbiyim kineged harosh, and you should pick up the hands level to your head. Why is this? So it's brought down that when we wash our hands and we remove the ruach hatumah, we stretch out our hands, we want to be makabel, a ruach of tahara. We want to accept tahira onto our hands. So washing the hands in the morning, this is something that we were trained to do already when we were little kids, right? Shma b'ni musar avicha v'al titaish Torah simecha. A lot of people ask the question, it's very funny. Shma b'ni musar avicha, you should listen to the musar, to the teichacha, to the rebuke of your father. V'al titaish Torah simecha. Don't forsake the Torah of your mother. Who would you think generally teaches a child more Torah? Is it the father or the mother? Right? You should know, in reality, it's the mother. You know why it's the mother? The mother wakes the kid up in the morning and says, Nu maidani. Did you go wash negelvasser? Make sure you remember to put on your tzitzits. You're sitting down to eat breakfast. Nu macha bracha. I didn't hear a bracha. This is all Torah simecha. So we all learned Torah simecha to wash negelvasser when we were little children. And the problem with that is, it's a wonderful thing, but the challenge of it is that we still have like a kindisha outlook, a very childish outlook on netillas yadayim. Netillas yadayim, negelvasser in the morning is something that we do with 3/4 asleep. We just walk in, boom, 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 we watch negelvasser, we're done. Take a look at what the Magen Avraham says here. Stretch out your hands open, lift them up level to your head, to go be makabel ruach tahara. This is not just boom, boom, boom. No, it's something very special. We're removing a ruach ra, and we're being makabel a ruach tahara. Now we'll speak a little bit more about this ruach tumah, but let's go a little bit further first. Now, says the Mishnah Berurah at the end of Eis Katan Tes here, Gam toiv lahadiach piv. it is also good to rinse out your mouth. A little plug over here for Listerine and Scope. It's a very good idea to rinse out your mouth in the morning. Why do you rinse out your mouth in the morning? The Mishnah Berurah says later, and I quote for the Mishnah Berurah, Ki tzarich lahazkir es Hashem hagadol. We're going to go daven. When you go daven, you're going to be saying the Shem Hashem. You're going to make brechas hashakar. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher nasa l'sech v'vinu l'avkim ben yom u'ben loila. You're uttering the Shem hagadol v'hanoira. You're saying the Shem of the Rebbeinu Shalom. When you say the Shem of the Rebbeinu Shalom, it has to be B'kedusha tahara. What do we say when we the avodah on Yom Kippur? Right? We speak about the Kohen Gadol. Right? Kisha Yushaimim, when they heard the Shem Hagadol v'hamefarish Yatsa mipi Kohen Gadol B'kedusha v'tahara. Right? So we too, we're not saying maybe that Shem HaMefarish, we're not pronouncing it the way the Kohen Gadol did in the Beis HaMikdash, but you're saying Shem Shamayim. Shem Shamayim has to come from a mouth that is Kedusha v'Tahara. Now you wake up in the morning and your mouth is phlegmy and it feels, all full of schmutz and everything else. Is that a keli that you use to say the Shem HaGadol v'Hakadosh Kedusha v'Tahara? No. So Tov l'hadiach piv, you're supposed to rinse out your mouth before you go to davening. Ubetainis tzibur lo yadiach. However, the Mishnah Berurah says on the tainis tzibur, you should not rinse out your mouth. When we learned hilchos tainis, we learned the Mishnah Berurah says if somebody has a lot of tsar from his mouth when he wakes up, his mouth is all yucky when he wakes up and it's pashut mitzstar, he is allowed to rinse out his mouth on a tainis tzibur. Just the Mishnah Berurah says he should be very careful to put his face forward so that nothing is going to flow down into his throat and he shouldn't inadvertently come to swallow something. Okay, now we go to Ois Katan Yud. The Mishnah Berurah says Shalosh Pa'amim. The Mechaber said you should wash the hands 3 times. Va'afilu shayfech harbe b'pamecha deina moil. Says the Chavetz Chaim, this concept that we have to wash the hands 3 times in order to remove the ruach ra has nothing to do with a specific volume of water. Even if you would pour a lot of water onto your hand 1 time, it's not going to remove the ruach ra. To remove the ruach ra, you need 3 times. Ki ein haruach haylech elo b'shalosh pa'amim. The ruach ra does not leave until you pour water on the hands 3 times. Tahainu, what does this mean? Pamachas al yad yamin. First we pour once on the right hand. V'achakach al yad smile. Then we pour once on the left hand. And we keep on going like that, back and forth. Ad shalosh pa'amim b'seirugin. Until we do this 3 times in an alternate order. Alternating. So we take the cup in the left hand, we pour once on the right hand, then we shift it to the right hand, pour once on the left hand, shift it back to the left hand, pour a second time on the right hand, and continuing to do so until we have poured 3 times on each hand. Indeed, when I was a child growing up, I didn't hear the term Negelwasser, which literally means nail water, but I didn't hear the term Negelwasser until I was a lot older. When I was a little kid growing up, it was called eins eins. You have to wash eins eins. What's eins eins? 1 1. It's in Yiddish. Eins 1 eins 1. Why is it called eins eins? Eins 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 eins. That's the way you do it. You do it 1 time on each hand b'seirugin. And this is what it takes in order to remove the ruach ra. Now let's finish out this Ois Katan Yud. Many people have this minig. The Mishnah Berurah brings down over here from the Sefer Maaseh Rav. The Sefer Maaseh Rav Kosav, in the Sefer Maaseh Rav it is written Arba Pa'amim, that you should actually wash the hands 4 times each. Why? Shalosh Pa'amim lahaver ruach ra. It takes 3 times to remove the ruach ra. Va'aravius, and the 4th time laha'avir hamayim shenitma'u, removes the water that is now imbued with the ruach ra. Right? You poured water on your hands 3 times. Now the ruach ra is gone. But you have this water on your hand that was used to remove the ruach ra. That water is nitmu'u. That water is contaminated with ruach ra. So we pour again a 4th time in order to wash that water off. I believe there's a Dirshu footnote for Chaim Kanievsky that brings down that technically the fourth washing doesn't really have to be done b'seirugin, one on one hand and one on the other. If it's just to remove the mayim shenitma'u, so wash 3 times b'seirugin and then wash your hands, and that water is gone. But yet the minig seems to be to wash the 4th time also b'seirugin. Continues the Chavetz Chaim, tzarech lahazir lanoshim. We have to make sure that the women are aware. Sheyizaru b'netillas yadayim shalish pa'amim b'seirugin k'may ha'anoshim. They also have to wash their hands 3 times each, alternating in an alternating fashion, the same way the men do. They have the ruach ra the same way a man does. The gam, and furthermore, in a sense, it's even more important for the women, ki heim mesaknoi sama acholim, because generally speaking, they're the ones that are going to handle the food, and we're going to see that the ruach ra could go on the food and could affect people that eat the food. Shalayitamu b'deim. We don't want the food to be affected by the ruach ra. Gam yesh lizar shaktanim yitlu yudeim b'shachris. We also have to be very careful that little children should wash their hands, because even if they're not higia lechinuch, etc., but they touch food. However, very important halacha, the Chavetz Chaim brings down an important yediyah. However, when it comes to einam Yehudim touching food, that we do not have to worry about if they touch food without netillas yadayim. Why? Deloi mikabli tuma, because they are not mikabel tuma. Now let's discuss this for a minute and see what this means. First of all, what exactly is the source and the nature of this ruach hatuma that shara al yadayim? So there's a very interesting lashon in the Gemara in Shabbos Tav Kuf Tesam and Aleph. That's where this Gemara, that's where this halakha is based on. The Gemara says over here, the Gemara brings down a brisa that starts on the bottom of Kuf Ches Amid Beis. Tanya Nami Hachi Yamar Rabbi Muna Mishem Rabbi Yehuda. Tova Tipas Tzayin and Shacharis Rechitzes Yadayim Raglayim Arvis Bikol Kiluri Shaba Olam Hu Yomer Yad La'ayin Tikotzeitz. The hand that touches the eye before netillas yadayim. Rashi says Shacharis Kodim She'it Al Yadav. The hand that touches the eye before netillas yadayim in the morning, tikotzeitz. It would be better that it should be cut off. Yad lechoitin, the hand that touches the nose before netillas yadayim, tikotzeitz. It would be better, it should be cut off. Yad lepeh, the hand that touches the mouth, tikotzeitz. Yad leoizen, the hand that touches the ear, tikotzeitz. Also, it should be cut off. Yad lechasuda, the hand that touches the place that was used for bloodletting, the wound from bloodletting, tikotzeitz. Yad la'amo tikotzeitz, the hand that touches the makam amila, tikotzeitz, it should be cut. Yad lepi tabas tikotzeitz, yad legigis tikotzeitz, the hand that touches a barrel of beer, tikotzeitz. So all of these things the Gemara brings down that it would be better that the hand should be cut off than the hand should cut these things, that the hand should touch these areas of the body before netillas yadayim. And then the Gemara says, Tanya Rabbi Nasan Omer, Rabbi Nasan says, Bas chayrin hizu. This ruach ra that rests on the hands. Why does the Brisa say that you should not touch the mouth, the eyes, the nose, the ears? Why does the Brisa say you should not touch these areas before netillas yadayim? Because of the ruach ra that rests on the hands until netillas yadayim, until they are removed by virtue of our netillas yadayim. Says the Brisa, Tanya Rabbi Nasan, Rabbi Nasan says, Bas chayrin hizu. This ruach ra is a very chashuv a ruach ra. She's a bas chayrin. What does that mean, a bas chayrin? Rashi says, Bas chayrin. Haruach hashara al yadayim lifnei netila. This ruach ra that rests on the hands before netila is a bas chayrin. She's like a noble woman. And the Marsha says over here, what that means is she's like a noble woman amongst the other ruchais. In the world of ruchais, she's a very chashuv a ruach, and nobody could boss her around. And she, the Brisa says, umakpedes, she's makpid. Ad sheyirchitz yadav gibel pamim. She is makpid. She does not leave until you wash your hands 3 times. You think you could remove her with a simple washing? No, you cannot. It takes a washing of 3 times to chase her away. She sets the rules. She's a bas chayrin. And her rule is, I don't leave until you wash my hands 3 times. Now this is where it's based on. Now, what's pshat that a ruach ra rests on the hands? Why does this bas chayrin, this ruach ra, how does it get on your hands in the morning? The answer is because at night you go to sleep. We give our neshama as a pekadon to the Rabbeinu Shalom when we go to sleep. In the morning, the Rabbeinu Shalom returns the neshama to us, and we say, that you returned the neshama to me, bechemla, out of great compassion. Rabbe emunosecha, great is your faithfulness. So, at night when we go to sleep, we have deposited our neshama with the Rabbeinu Shalom. That means that on a certain level at least, the neshama is no longer attached to our guf. Now we've spoken about this already many times. The dichotomy that is a human being, right? The human being, I like to say, is like barad. It's like eish and mayim. The barad was a mixture of eish and mayim, which is not possible. But the Rabbeinu Shalom made a nace, and he created the barad by the Makkah in Mitzrayim, and he made shalom between the eish and the mayim, and it formed barad, and they peacefully coexisted. A human being is a guf of chumrius, it's a guf of gashmius, that the Mesilas Yesharim says pulls us constantly towards gashmius. Vayipach ba'apav nishbas chaim, and the Rabbeinu Shalom took a ruach and neshama mimal, and he blew it, a dvar ruchni, a neshama which is complete ruchnius, and he blew it into the guf. It took the Rabbeinu Shalom to do that. Only the Rabbeinu Shalom could make the neshama and the ruchniistic neshama and the chumriistic guf peacefully coexist. Now we don't coexist so peacefully. Mesilas Yesharim says that we're in a constant state of milchama. The guf wants to pull us down to gashmius, the neshama wants to pull us up to ruchnius. So we don't peacefully coexist so perfectly. But yet, the neshama stays in the guf, and they work together. But at night, we deposit our neshama with Borei Olam. When that happens, the guf that during the day was elevated, it was a keli that was retaining a ruchniistic neshama. When the neshama goes up to shamayim, now there's a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. Now there's a vacuum that's been left in the keli, which is our guf. And this bas chayrin, this ruach hatumah, tries to descend and tries to take over the guf. And it rests on us during the night, but then we wake up and we say Maidani and Hechzar to be Nishmasi. The Rabbeinu Shalom again inserts the neshama into the guf. At that point, the ruach hatumah is chased to the hands. It remains on the hands until you wash the netillas yadayim. Now the truth is that this concept is not such a foreign concept. We know that what is avi avois hatumah, what is the most potent source of tumah? A corpse, a mace. A mace is not an avatumah. A mace is an avi avois hatumah. Somebody comes into contact with the mace, he becomes an av hatumah. So a corpse, a mace, is an avi avois hatumah. Why is it an avi avois hatumah? The Rabbeinu Bechaya says the reason it's an avi avois hatumah is because the guf is chumrius, it's complete gashmius. The Rabbeinu Shalom invested it with a ruchniistic neshama. But upon Misa, when a person dies and the neshama completely leaves the guf, now it becomes tumah. But the Rabbeinu Bechaya says, if you use the neshama and if you use Torah mitzvahs to elevate your guf, you could elevate your guf until the guf itself becomes ruchnius. That's why Taisus and Ksubis says that Kishemes Rebbe, when Rebbe died, the Rebbe Yanai was machriz ein tumah hayoim. There's no tumah. A kohen was able to touch. Rabbeinu Bechaya says a kohen could have touched Rebbe's guf. Why? Because Rebbe elevated the guf mamish into ruchnius. We're not at that level. So that's why at night, when the neshama leaves, there's a ruach hatumah that comes. It's shoira al yadayim. When we wake up in the morning, it's still on our hands. The Gemara says she's a bas chayrin, and she sets the rules, and she decided that she doesn't leave until we leave 3 times, until we wash 3 times. Now, together with what the Mishnah Berurah brought down from the Magen Avram, that after we wash our hands, we should stretch out our hands. We want to be makabel tahara. Now this invests this whole act that we do so soon upon awakening in the morning when we're half asleep. Now we get to see a lot more what's behind it. We're like a kohen, says the Rashba, washing our hands from the kiyar in preparation for avodas habayre. Says the Rosh, we're doing it to wash our hands in preparation for tefillah. Says the Zayar, we have to wash our hands to chase off this ruach hatumah that was shoir al yadayim while we were sleeping, and now we want to be makabel tahara. So this is not just a simple boom, 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 boom. You see how chashuv this is. Okay. Very interesting. I'll read to you the nusach of the Shulchan Aruch Harav. The Shulchan Aruch Harav says, yeah, and this speaks to, as the Mishnah Berurah says, we don't have this issue with Einam Yehudim. An Eina Yehudi, we don't have to worry. We could go to a cafe and order a scrambled egg sandwich for breakfast, even though the Eina Yehudi behind the counter did not wash the netillas yadayim and he's handling our food. Says the Shulchan Aruch Harav, Ruach Tomazu Eina Misava Lishrois. This Ruach HaTorah, this Bas Chayrin, has no desire to rest. Ela B'Keli Shel Kodesh. This Ruach HaTorah wants to possess a keli of kedusha. B'makom kedusha shenistalka misham. The Yiddish guf that was invested with a neshama tahira, with a ruchniistic neshama tahira, that drives us to Torah mitzvahs. When that neshama tahira goes out of the guf, it goes up to Shamayim when we go to sleep. That's when this ruach tumah wants to go and repossess the guf. But an Eina Yehudi says an Eina Yehudi doesn't have that type of neshama. Whatever the Eina Yehudi has, it's not the chelik elikim mimal that we have that should make the Bas Chayrin, that should make the ruach tumah want to possess his keli. So that's why by an Eina Yehudi, we do not have to worry. Okay. Now we go to Siv Gimel. There is a... No, okay. Let's go to Siv Gimel. Says the Mechaber Siv Gimel. Lo yiga b'yadai kaidim netila. You should take care not to touch with your hand before you wash the netillas yadayim. La peh, not to the mouth. V'loy lachaitim, not to the nose. V'loy la'aznayim, not to the ears. V'loy la'inayim, and not to the eyes. And this is based on that Gemara, that brisa that I read to you, Shabbos Kuf Chesam and Beis Kuf Tesam and Aleph, Yad Lapet Tikotzetz. It would be better that the hand that touches the mouth before netillas yadayim, it would be better that that hand should be cut off. It's a serious danger, the Gemara says. This ruach ra, if you touch these openings of the body before netillas yadayim, the Gemara says that the brisa, Tana, the words of Tanoim, the brisa says that it could be very, very dangerous. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting it off, cutting netila. Why? Because this ruach ra that's resting on the hands, it could harm these organs of the body. You shouldn't touch the eyes. Says the Mishnah Berurah, even if your eyes are closed, so you're not touching the interior of the eye. Says the Chavetz Chaim, no. You shouldn't even touch the outside of the eyelid im efshalai if it's at all possible. So b'di'evet, the Mishnah Berurah seems to be saying, if you're stuck, you could touch the outside of the eyelid. What this is based on, I believe, is we're going to see later on that to touch one of these openings of the body through a cloth, that seems to be okay. So there are those that say, no, if you could touch it through a cloth, so if you close the eye and you touch the outside of the eye, that should also not be a problem. However, others say, no, A cloth is external to the body. Since it's external to the body, it could form an interposition between the ruach ra and the organ itself. But the eyelid is part and parcel of the eye, and therefore it does not serve as an interposition between the hand that has the ruach ra and the interior of the eye that can be harmed by that ruach ra. Incidentally, when we speak about the problem of touching these organs with the hand, it seems it's not only a question of the fingertips. Note that all of the language over here is lo yiga biyadoi. You should not touch with your hand. It doesn't say lo yiga be'etzba'osav, with your fingers. And we see that the requirement to wash netillas yadayim lechatchila is ad perak hazraya, all the way until the wrist. So it would seem that lechatchila, you should not touch any of these parts of the body, even with the back of the hand, even with this area of the hand. No part of the hand should come into contact with any one of these avarim before netillas yadayim. I did have a paisik. It's I should check over here. It's on a text message. I did have a paisik tell me, that lechatchila we worry about this all the way taka until the wrist. There are those that say that beyond the knuckles are okay. So I guess b'diavad, if you have a real need to go like this to the eyes, past the kishrei etzba'isa, past the knuckles, maybe there's room to be matir. But there are certainly those that say that it's problematic all the way down to the wrist. Okay. Now, before we go to Sif Daled, I just want to point out the Mechaber over here, Sif Beis, Sif Gimel. In Sif Beis, the Mechaber introduced to us the need to wash the hands to remove the ruach ra. In Sif Gimel, the Mechaber told us, since there is this ruach ra that you need to remove through the washing of netillas yadayim, do not touch the mouth, the nose, the ears, the eyes before netillas yadayim, because that could bring harm to those avarim. And again, that's based on the brisa that we saw in Masechta Shabbos. Now let's move along to Sif Daled, where now the Mechaber is going to tell us that there are other things that you should not touch, even besides the problem of the netillas yadayim. Says the Mechaber Sif Daled, afilu misha natal yadav, even somebody who did wash netillas yadayim. So until now we were speaking about a netillas yadayim problem, a ruach ra problem. Now we're moving on, and since I just told you that there are times that there are things you shouldn't touch, because touching them could bring to harm because of ruach ra, because of netillas yadayim, now says the Mechaber, I'm also going to segue, and I'm going to tell you that there are other things that bichlal you shouldn't be in the habit of touching. Forget netillas yadayim, forget ruach ra. Just you shouldn't be in the habit of touching these things. Says the Mechaber, afilu misha natal yadav, even somebody who washed netillas yadayim. So there's no issue of ruach ra. Lo yamashmesh b'piat habas tamid. You should not habitually touch the anal opening. You shouldn't touch that area. Why? Because it could lead to a problem of hemorrhoids. It could be an irritant, and it could bring to a problem with hemorrhoids. So, nothing to do with netillas yadayim. I'm telling you, practical. Don't habitually touch that area, because it could bring you to a practical problem. Further, says the Mechaber, do not be in the habit of touching the wound that comes from bloodletting. Or nowadays, you go to the lab and they take blood. Don't touch that area. Because handling a wound could bring problems to a wound. Infection, right? This is avoiding infection 101. You don't touch a wound because you have bacteria on your fingers. Mishbush hayadayim, mishbush hayad mazik lechabura. It could bring a problem to a wound. Yeah, it brings bacteria to a wound. So right now the Mechaber is talking on a practical level. Now, what's interesting is that both of these items were mentioned in the same brisa that I read to you. The Brisa says over here, Yad lechasuda, the hand that goes to touch the Makom hakaza, the wound from bloodletting, tikotzetz. It would be better, it should be cut off. The same exact Brisa and the same exact lashon that the Brisa used for touching the nose, touching the mouth. Right? Now, over there, what Rashi said over there, all of these, first Rashi said, where is it? Yad la'ayin, shachris kaidim sheyitel yadav. But so that the Rashi seemed to be very, very clear that the problem over there was a ruach ra problem. But now by these things, which are in the same brisa, the Mechaber is telling us it's not a ruach ra problem. Now this is a practical problem, not a ruach ra problem. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Yud Gimel. Afilu, even if you wash the netillas yadayim, you shouldn't touch these areas. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'koidim netila, before you wash the netillas yadayim, yesh oisrin miliga b'piyat habas afilu b'mikre. The Mechaber said over here that even after netillas yadayim, you should not touch the anal opening, the piyat habas, tamid, habitually. Because doing so, could create a problem of hemorrhoids. Says the Chavetz Chaim, how about before netillas yadayim? So before netillas yadayim, says the Mishnah Berurah, yesh oisrin, and he brings this down from the Gra and the Chai Adam, yesh oisrin to touch the piyat habas, afilu b'mikre, even not habitually. Why? Because of the Brisa in Masechta Shabbos. So Brisa in Masechta Shabbos says, Yad l'tabas, right? That's the lashon, I believe. Yeah, Yad l'pi tabas, tikotzetz. You shouldn't touch that area. L'pi tabas, you don't touch. Why? Ruach ra. So, again, the Mechaber mentioned the piyat habas. He didn't mention the piyat habas in Siv Gimel. In Siv Gimel, he doesn't mention it. He only mentions it in Siv Daled. And in Siv Daled, he says the reason you shouldn't touch it is because of a practical problem of taktonios. And he says it's only a problem if you touch it tamid, if you touch it habitually. Brings down the Chavetz Chaim from the Gra and from the Chai Adam, touching the piyat habas is also a problem b'mikreh, even if you only do it once in a while, before netillas yadayim. What's the problem? Ruach ra, the Brisa in Shabbos. But apparently the Mechaber held that ruach ra is not an issue by the piyat habas. Okay. Continues the Chavetz Chaim in Ois Katan Yud Gimel, and he says, V'chein lo'ama, so too the Makam Amila, b'mekayim hanekev, at the opening of the Makam Amila where the urine exits the body, that's also an opening of the body. And therefore you shouldn't touch it. And again, it's in the Brisa in Shabbos. Yad la'ama, the hand that touches the male organ, the Makam Amila, tikotzetz. So, says the Mishnah Berurah, even by a married person, where we saw previously, we are sometimes more makel for a married individual to touch that area because we're not afraid of it bringing to Eitzar Shechva Zera Levatala. But even a married person, before netillas yadayim, he shouldn't touch it because it's an opening of the body. And the Brisa in Shabbos says that all of these areas, you could bring harm to them by touching them before netillas yadayim. V'chein ka'agav the b'makom nekev hakazeh. Also, the wound from the bloodletting. Yeah, you shouldn't touch it because touching it could bring a problem to the chabura. But before netillas yadayim, you also shouldn't touch it because it's in the Brisa in Shabbos and it's an opening of the body and the ruach ra could get in. So there's this yesh oisrin that says that the Brisa in Shabbos, all of the areas of the body that are mentioned in the Brisa in Shabbos, not only the mouth, the nose, the ears, and the eyes, the anal opening as well, the opening of the Makam Amila as well, the opening of the Makam HaKazeh as well, all of those places that are mentioned in the Brisa on Shabbos are all susceptible to ruach ra. And therefore you shouldn't touch any of those places, afilu b'mikreh, even only once in a while before netillas yadayim. Then there's an additional problem, which is you shouldn't touch these places habitually even after netillas yadayim, because they could bring about a practical problem. The wound of the Makam HaKazeh could become infected. the area of the piatabas could bring you to tachtoiniyos. The area of the makom amila could make a problem with tzashik bazer levatala. But they're also susceptible to ruach ra. But the Mechaber seems to learn not that way. Okay. Now we go to Sif Hey, where we have a very similar situation. Says the Mechaber, Lo yiga begigis shechar. You should not touch a vat of beer. You shouldn't come into contact. You shouldn't touch beer. Why? Shemish b'shayad mafsid shechar. Handling beer could ruin beer. Now, this is also, it happens to be, that anything that's made with fermentation, if you introduce foreign bacteria when you're making wine or when you're making beer, you could cause problems. You could spoil the whole batch of beer. You could spoil the whole batch of wine. So again, the Mechaber seems to be speaking here practical. This has nothing to do with netillas yadayim. Lo yiga begiga shecher. Don't touch a vat of beer. Shemish b'shayad mafsid shecher. Because handling beer with your hands could ruin the beer. And if you take a look at the beer halacha, what the Mechaber wants to say is, achar netila, after you wash the netillas yadayim, don't touch the beer. Because you could ruin the beer by handling it. The Mechaber was not talking about before netillas yadayim. The Mechaber does not see a netillas yadayim issue over here. Now, over here, the Mechaber has a basis in Rashi, even though touching the beer is again in the same brisa in Shabbos. Yad legigis tikotzetz. The hand that touches the vat of beer, it would be better. It should be cut off. Says Rashi, legigis shemetilu b'shechar, the vat that you use to put down beer in, tikotzetz, it should be chopped off. Oh, I'm sorry. No, Rashi is the other way. You shouldn't touch it before you wash your hands, the netillas yadayim, in the morning. So Rashi is not like the Mechaber. Rashi is very clear that the problem of touching the giga shel shechar, touching the vat of beer, is a ruach ra problem. But again, the Mechaber is not learning that way. The Mechaber is learning it's a practical problem. And we see this reflected in the Bir Halacha. The Bir Halacha says the Mechaber is talking about even after netila. However, continues the Bir Halacha, bebach v'taz ubir agra. If you look at the bach, the taz, and the Bir agra, his skimu, they all agree the kaidim netila also liga begigel shel shechar. A vat of beer, you're not allowed to touch before the netillas yadayim. Memnei shal yedei zeh yuchal hachtis ruach ra l'sech shechar. Because doing so will imbue the beer with the ruach ra, and it could bring harm to the ones who drink the beer. And according to the Bach, the Taz, and the Bir Agra, which all seem to be grounded in Rashi, turns out that even b'di'evet, if a yid touched the beer before the netillas yadayim, you got to throw that beer out. You should be nizar not to drink that beer because it could hurt you. The Chayei Adam says halacha l'maisa. You're not allowed to drink that beer. Okay. So again, we have this dichotomy, this duality over here, where the Mechaber seems to be talking in Sif Dalet and Sif Hey about practical problems, but all of these things are brought down in the same brisa in Shabbos that talks about ruach ra. And the Mishnah Berurah and the Bir Halacha are bringing down that even though the Mechaber is couching it in practical terms, there are definitely others that say that all of these things are also susceptible to ruach ra, kodim netillas yadayim. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting yodalid, mafsid hashechar, touching the beer could ruin the beer. V'im naga b'meichel kodim shenot yadav. How about other foods? The brisa in Shabbos only mentions beer. Doesn't mention bread, doesn't mention any other food. So do you have to worry about other foods if you touch them before the netillas yadayim? If you touch food before the netillas yadayim, ein lesser ha'meicher al yedei zeh. The Mishnah Berurah says you should not ask the food based on that. But lechatchila, you should make sure not to touch any food before netillas yadayim, even though the Brisa only mentions beer. The Brisa does not mention any other food. So therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, b'diavad, you touch the other food, we're not going to ask for the food. Lechatchila, you should be very careful not to touch any food before the netillas yadayim because of this worry of the ruach hara. Beer is mentioned in the Brisa. Therefore, in the beer halacha, the Chavetz Chaim says you touched beer before the netillas yadayim, throw it out. If you did touch food and it's a dry food that you could wash, you should wash it off 3 times to remove the ruach hara. You should also not smoke or inhale any kind of tabak. He uses the word lishtais, to drink. That's the way in halacha they refer to smoking, to inhaling something. They refer to it as a type of shtia. So you shouldn't smoke tabak because you have to touch it with your fingers. You shouldn't do anything like that before the netillas yadayim. Okay, I thought we would go a little bit further, but I see the time has run out, so we'll stop over here. We'll pick up next time with Sivav. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. This was limud HaTorah. Should be begging against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbe should say Yeshua first Parnas and Shidduchim to all those in need, and we should be zeicher to see the BS Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu. Amen. Be well.